Welcome back to the Other Side Lifestyle with Jim and Aram. Today we are talking with one of the biggest fans of the television show True Detective. She loves to start drinking at noon, just like Matthew McConaughey. And we're going to tell you today how to lose a ton of weight super fast. And it does not matter where you are starting. You could have experience, no experience. We're going to get your summer body in 1 hour today through listening to this conversation for this summer coming up.
And we're
Did I
canceled.
did I get it right?
Man, you
Yeah.
nailed that
I
intro.
think I got
I'm
it right.
hammered right now.
I'm 3/4 of the way.
I'm on
It's
it. I'm on point three of Molly right now, and I'm about to do my third line of blow. So we're gonna have a good conversation.
It's gonna be a
point
great,
three.
great
If you see me just
podcast.
caressing this microphone and rubbing my beard on it.
He's pretending it's me.
No, I'm definitely not drunk, but I would not be opposed to a good drink because it is very
Yeah.
sunny and warm right now.
What
So
time
maybe
is it where
after
you
this-
are? Are you
You're
East
in
Coast?
Texas, right?
I'm in Florida.
Oh shit.
And so it is 3:00,
Same
3:07.
here.
Wait,
Same
where in
here.
Florida are you?
Not Florida though.
Tampa.
Gasparilla.
Oh, okay. Actually, no. Fuck Gasparilla. So I've lived here.
Same. Fuck
Wow.
Gasparilla.
Fun
Yeah.
intro. So hey, I'm Laurin. No, so I've lived here now coming up on like 9 years. I moved here for the master's program. And so that was in like the fall of 2014. And I've never been to Gasparilla. I don't know how, I don't know why. It just had never come up. It had never happened. And then actually we were just talking about the PEC. So one of the events that I was speaking at happened to be that weekend, and I was on a program called 75 Hard, which is like a 2-a-day workout.
Never heard of it.
Okay,
Is that
I
a
don't
popular?
I'm totally kidding.
Not everybody knows
I'm just
that.
kidding.
So
Oh no.
Well,
trust
they're
me,
not listening to this then.
Okay.
Don't listen to this.
We've had
I'm just
had
kidding.
our gripes with Mr. Frizella.
It's our
okay.
favorite.
Okay.
Not with him. Just
I was like, I
no,
work with First Form, so I would love to hear about this gripe.
Not with him, with how some people went a little too much with 75 Hard with no exit strategy and
absolutely.
Kind of
it's actually funny after you've done it. I have a much deeper appreciation for it because
absolutely
now I see how people have done it wrong.
Yeah.
And I can understand that, but I appreciate it even more for the template that it provides. But anyways, so I was doing 75 Hard, which is you have to do 2 workouts.
What's 75 Hard? I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
And
just
so
cycle the same.
It's just like an hour in. You're like, hey, what's this thing? It's like a button you have now. What's 75 Hard? So I love that you guys are all over the place too, because this is how my brain operates. There's like 3 jokes brewing and I'm already talking about something else. So anyways, PEC all fucking day long, all these talks. So I have to get, I'm presenting, so I need to look
get
legit.
drunk.
Yeah, I'm wasted. And so I need to look, presentable. So I have to get up really early, do my first workout, and then we're there all day. And then I was like, listen, Chanel, I gotta go do my second workout. Let's head out. And so I have an office downtown. I have like a co-working space, and I was like, oh, we'll just park there, and then we'll go by the Riverwalk because she lives in Louisville, so not like a ton of water. So whenever she comes, I'm like, let's go do a walk by the beach. Let's go buy this water, just to get something that's like different. It's like, oh, well, I'll just park down there. We'll walk by the Riverwalk for my second workout. We'll be good to go. I think Gasparilla is on the water and is done. Very wrong. I get there and I'm like, whoa. Like, this is still very much happening. And basically, it's from what I see, it's like people make like these like floats and they're driving down the road. So half the roads are shut down. Like, you can't cross the street. Things are shut down. And it's like this weird, like, fake story of like a pirate coming to Tampa, which I don't know how this started. And people are just, it's an excuse. Basically, it's an excuse.
It's a true story. It's
an excuse to day drink and wear beads, which, hey, if I'm all about it, like, do whatever.
Yeah.
But I need to get to the other side of the street. And that's not happening because it's now 6:00 and everybody who's been day drinking is absolutely shit tanked.
Oh God.
The worst.
And yeah, the absolute worst. I'm dead sober. I just need to get my fucking walk done. All I want to do is get across the street. The cops are like, no, I don't know. And I'm like, okay. Anyways, we finally find it. And then we get to now we're finishing out the walk, and the barricades are still up because I don't know why. And people are getting rowdy. People are getting real rowdy. And all of a sudden I see people start, and I'm like, oh God. And Chanel's like, we're going to have to go. Like, if they shake this and we're going to have to run and jump. And I'm like, what the fuck? So anyways, people drop the first gate. Everybody runs across the street. but the other one is still up. So I'm trying to like jump over, right? I can't believe I'm telling this on the fucking podcast. I just met you guys. So anyways, I get, so I run up and I'm not athletic. We'll just say that nicely. I'm not very athletic, but anyways, I'm trying my best. I'm like, I gotta hang, right? I gotta get out of here. And so I put my foot in and I'm about to jump over and I'm using like all of my momentum, you know what I mean? Obviously to do this, my foot slips and I land straight on the like gate. And I was like, and Chanel's like, oh my God. And I was like, so I like somehow like slide off. And I'm like, well, I'm like, oh my God, this is the worst. I'm never coming back to Gasparilla ever again.
And nobody noticed because everybody was on a different planet.
Yeah, of course nobody noticed, but I was very much in pain. I was just like,
that'd been awesome to see on like a Gasparilla fails IG page.
I'm sure there is one.
This idiot like, going for a walk.
Yeah,
everybody else who's wasted is fine, not colliding with their bodies into fences.
Yeah.
Wow. I was like, I am never coming back to this thing ever.
I think that's maybe we'll start an IG. It's like sobriety sucks, and then it's just pictures of sober people and videos of sober people falling and injuring themselves.
Yeah, basically, it's just all me.
Like, Tampa's a great place. I'm a big fan of Tampa. I've had a lot of fun at Mons Venus. I've had a lot of fun.
Can you tell us a very explicit, detailed story
about Mons Venus?
Not going to know what
like
just
Mons. So Mons
just of
Venus,
one of your escapades in Tampa.
Mons Venus is where Motley Crue used to hang out a lot in the 80s and 90s.
It's a full nude strip club.
Yes.
So BYOB, which is very random.
Which is fucking amazing because when we
that's
pulled
how it is here in like Jersey, Philly.
Yeah.
It's like if it's full nude, you have to.
Nude, yeah.
That's so hilarious. We can't give you alcohol. If the thong comes off, we cannot provide alcohol. We have ethics.
Well, why wouldn't you? Because the reason is because if a man sees a vagina and he's drinking, it's automatically going to be predatory.
Absolutely. It's like wearing a mask during COVID.
Basically.
It's effective and necessary.
Yeah. So
basically.
we 15 guys pulled up in a pink stretch zebra Hummer and spilled out of this thing with like $1,000 worth of alcohol. We walked into Mons Venus. We had called them earlier. And that night, God, what was the pitcher's name for the Tampa Bay Rays at the time? He was there. The starting running back of the Buccaneers was there. And I was rolling with a bunch of guys who were like all finance dudes in New York City who had a ton of fucking money. And within 30 minutes, every girl that was in the place was on us hanging out. The broom was coming out with all the money. And Cadillac Williams, who was the starting running back, had not one person with him. And David Price, that's who it was, all starting pitcher of the Rays by himself, sitting there with no girls around him. They walked across the street to the other strip club to grab girls to come back to this strip club. And at the end of the night, we get a standing ovation. The lights come on and they give us a round of applause. And then we leave. And I think it was like a $27,000 or $28,000 spend between 15 people. And that's why strip clubs are the best places on earth.
So what's extra hilarious about Tampa? So I was born in Pennsylvania, but basically lived in Florida my whole life.
Ew.
I know. Grew up in South Florida, live in Tampa now. And Tampa, honestly, or Florida is an interesting place. You know, I love it. We got a little bit of everything. Florida. We got a little bit of everything at all times with everyone. Like it's interesting. But here in Tampa, like literally, I mean, you know where Mons Venus is. It's on one of the main roads. So it's like, it'll be like you're driving on a main road and you're like, okay, Audi dealership, Sonic, Mons Venus, Odyssey 2000, which are both strip clubs. And then there's like a Petco, you know, and it's like, hey, like who the fuck like people who move here are like, is this like, I'm like, yeah, it's just Dale Mabry. You know, we got a little bit of everything. Casey
There's like a Jehovah's Witness building right next to it all.
Straight up. Like it is just like, you need to go you want to go to Target in Ulta? Yes. And then you can also go, like, it is so funny.
We like options. We need
like a car repair shop right next to the strip club. That would be genius.
That would be, well, that's where we have like the massage parlors with no windows are always next to like the used car places. And you're like, this is a nice joint business venture.
I always get my back cracked at those places.
Gotta love the hustle.
and understand when she said massage parlor, she did it in quotes. If you didn't hear the quotes,
she
said it, she did air quotes there.
the
if you're picking up what she's putting down.
yeah, one of those spots. So
So Laurin, who are you and what do you do? Why are you here? Why'd you show up today?
I think we just run with
I
this.
think we just found you on the internet.
we just did like a comedy special.
I just DM random people and say, hey, do you want a podcast?
Actually, wouldn't that be hilarious? Like if you were someone, like imagine like a Theo Vaughn just like randomly like call someone and it's just like, yo, I think you even used to do that.
That actually would be genius.
It's called the Jerky Boys. That was 1993.
This
like
one
random-
time I went to the dentist. I wake up, my pants unbuttoned, my gums are bleeding.
Let's let her tell her story for like 3 minutes. You have 3 minutes.
I got 3 minutes. Okay. Well, hi. My name is Laurin Conlin. I do more than Gasparilla fails. So I run an online coaching business, Team Loco Fit. So we, coaching, consulting, work with a lot of lifestyle and physique athletes as well. I have my master's in exercise science, where this is how I'm in Tampa. My research was on how different types of dieting affect weight loss and weight regain. I am an author, I present, I speak, I do a bunch of different things. I work with a few companies like First Form in our industry and provide some education for them, the people within there. So I kind of do a little bit of everything, but coaching is my main thing, but I would say coach and educator, and coming up on 10 years of that. I mean, I started personal training about 12 years ago. But yeah, so that's the quick little elevator pitch of who I am.
That was perfect. That was under a minute.
Nailed it. I also love random tangents and laughing at things. If you guys couldn't tell, just my favorite kind of conversations.
Perfect.
So.
Let's discuss. We'll dive into the research part first. I think the research part that you did was actually really relatively applicable to the conversation we'll have. So you were talking about different diets and how those things outcome body composition. What were some of the things that you were researching as far as protocols, and what were some of the findings that you were coming up with?
Yeah. So first, let's kind of transport to that time frame. So I started grad school in 2014. I also didn't mention, but I used to compete as a pro, IFBB pro for many years, well, amateur and pro. And that was kind of the time frame where, 2013, 2014, 2015 was like the heyday for IFYM, right? That was when like everything was popping off in the message boards. That's when everybody was like, fuck your tilapia, like we're doing this. And of course, being someone who was in that kind of science-based community, that was like
If you can hear us, you froze. If you can't hear us, I feel bad because you're still talking. I may or may not edit this out.
You should, or not.
I think we'll just make this the preview of us talking about how she's frozen, and it's just her frozen right on there.
Where'd she go?
She's frozen.
I know that, but how do we unfreeze somebody?
If it fits your macros is awesome, because you can make cookies with protein powder and stevia.
You can. And if it fits your macros, is a great way to ignore all of your food quality whatsoever.
Yes, I really hope. Okay, good. All right,
right,
she'll join back in.
Yeah, we're just going to keep going with this.
We're just going to keep going. So, Aram, tell me another just fun little story.
So, when I woke up this morning, I had a delicious bowel movement.
Oh, I thought you were going to say like an erection. I was like, great, your testosterone's up. It's fantastic.
No, haven't had one of those in years.
Oh, that's okay. That's a problem with chronic dieting.
At this age, it's an achievement.
Tell us goals. Tell us about your bowel movement. Was it was just solid, girthy?
I think it was it was a 4 on the Bristol stool chart.
That's nice.
Delish. Coily. Compact. She's back.
Fantastic. That's fantastic.
What the fuck?
We just spoke like this about his stool for about 2 minutes after you froze, and we're probably just gonna leave it in there.
Oh, okay, great. Well, I'm back. I guess I'll just start with after your question. I'll go back.
We lost you at I competed and we were doing IIFYM.
Yes. So that was kind of the heyday of all of that, right? And so I knew I wanted to go to grad school to ask questions. I love questions and research, but I didn't really know what. But this was kind of this nice thing. Like, all right, like we all are doing this in practice. Does this really matter? And I was seeing a lot in real time with myself as a competitor and also coaching how important the navigating weight regain truly was, right? Like it wasn't just about fat loss. It was about what is happening afterwards. So I started digging into the literature, and there wasn't really like a clear path. So I kind of had to create my own background. So when you're, proposing research study, you have to look at other research to be like, hey, because of this, here's our other questions, right? So I was kind of taking from some of the weight regain literature, right, which a lot of that stuff was, some of it was human research, some of it was animal research. So taking from the weight regain literature, and then also taking from the eating behaviors literature, and saying, okay, based on these two things, let's make this study. So I wanted to look at how does how you diet affect weight loss, but also weight regain. So the way that we set this up was we had two groups. One was a tracking macros group. So you were prescribed either, 3 target macros and given a how to track macros ebook. And then the other group was on a meal plan. So everything was pretty much laid out. There were some options like rotated. It wasn't like a bro meal plan, like eat this tilapia and cry. It was a little bit more palatable because this was not competitors. But these were weight training individuals. They had to have some criteria there. So we were pretty much looking at a 10-week diet and then a 10-week post-diet follow-up. And the post-diet was just do whatever you want, but please come back. That's kind of how we framed it. So we looked at different body composition metrics. And then we also looked at, we use an eating behaviors questionnaire. A lot of the eating behavior questionnaires are very like eating disorder based, but this one, the 3-factor eating questionnaire, is much more geared towards kind of the mindset around food. So that's how we positioned it. So we had a 2-week baseline period, and then the 10-week diet, 10-week post diet. So it's a 22-week study, which for a grad student with really no funding, that's a really long study. Like obviously I would love to have done more, but there's only, again, so much feasibility that you can do in a in that kind of a setup. So I was under no delusions that what I was seeing with myself and clients was going to be replicated there, because again, what we're experiencing as competitive athletes is completely different. But still, let's replicate this, because most people are not competitive physique athletes. Most people are regular, lifestyle clients. So
Yep.
how does this apply? So really what we found was that there was no differences in the fat loss period. So that was super exciting. So pretty much
between the two groupings of the people that tracked and the people that were given a meal plan.
Yes, there was no statistical differences between the markers. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not inter-individual differences, but statistically speaking, there weren't any. And that was with body weight, body fat, lean body mass, RMR, and the 3-factor eating questionnaire. We also did salivary leptin, which had 0 findings. So don't ever do that. It's also hard to tell because our population was not, there were some people who were kind of pushing that edge, but there was no like obese population or obese individuals in our study. So the changes in leptin might have been so small, again, 10-week study for
statistically insignificant.
Yeah. So it's kind of hard to know, was it because of the methodology in terms of salivary leptin? Was it the byproduct of the individual maybe not getting enough? And there's a lot of reasons why things could have gone sideways.
Can you tell people what leptin is in case they don't know what
Sorry,
that is?
yeah. So leptin is a satiety hormone that is pretty much controlled and regulated by adipocytes. So when you are at a higher body fat percentage, you're going to have a higher amount of leptin. And as you diet, that will decrease. And that's pretty normal, because as the adipocytes shrink, that is what is going to happen. But of course, in some clinical settings for some individuals, and I'm drawing a blank on the name right now, but there is a name of a disorder where you pretty much are leptin resistant, and you don't produce enough and all of that, but it's pretty rare. So we were just kind of interested to see, does this dieting affect that? Because we do know that when somebody is in a calorie deficit, leptin will decrease and then ghrelin will increase, which is the hunger hormone that is regulated through your stomach.
So layman's terms, for anybody listening who did not understand that, if you have more leptin, you're going to not feel so hungry. If you have more ghrelin, I always teach the students, ghrelin's like the grr, like that hunger grr in your stomach, to remember the difference between ghrelin and leptin. So yeah, so if leptin goes down, you're going to feel a little bit more hungry potentially. You're not getting that signal to your brain that you're full. So that's what she's talking about.
Yeah, and that's a normal dieting response. So it's not that it's abnormal. We were just interested to see if there were any kind of marked differences there.
Yeah, it's our body's regulatory system. I think people, who talks
metabolic damage. It's
right.
Like, no, this is just a normal adaptation.
Yeah. I'm sure you're familiar with Lyle Garvey.
Who?
You know who Lyle Garvey is?
No, I actually don't. Well, maybe
Researcher,
I do, but
kind of a nerd attached.
Aram likes to find people, and then it makes him feel like he's like more important or smart.
He
like
learned a lot from
Stefan.
I'm the worst name dropper because I don't fucking know anybody. Stefan Guillenet, who was a researcher on obesity, he had a lot of findings from him. So
Okay.
he basically talks about the idea of leptin resistance, but he basically puts all of his stock into it as the reason why people can't lose fat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like everything.
There's like anything, like there are so many facets, right? And I feel like it's really dangerous to individuals when we pretty much say that it's only one thing, right? And
Yeah.
while certain things have a larger preponderance for creating change or not creating change, I don't think that we can always just kind of hang our hat on one thing, right? Like
Yeah.
that might be underlying, right? Like if we're talking about like in the psychological realm, like trauma, which is a very big, large word that could mean a lot of things to different people, but true trauma that someone has experienced can proliferate into things like hormonal and digestive disruptions over time, right? And it's this really hard kind of concept to be like, well, how did this affect so many different things, right? But it's like, while that has a large underpinning for a lot of things, like we can't only talk about that, right? There's other things that we can do, and I understand,
Like
especially in
Dr.
this.
Mark Hyman. It's always like the one, like Hyman's always like, nope, it's because of this. It's not your fault. And blah, blah, blah. No, these factors make it more of a difficult uphill climb.
Yes.
Having, being leptin
What
resistant is going to make it a difficult upward climb, but it's not
I
the
just
only reason.
it's so disempowering when you
Yeah.
hear that. But the unfortunate part is that when people hear that, they like, oh,
That,
perfect. Like this is it.
yes,
But
that's
then
I've always said that.
they identify
Yes.
and over-identify with it.
They want
Because
to
of
be
this, I
labeled.
can't.
They want to
Yeah.
be labeled. Even when you look at the DSM manual where they're diagnosing people, I mean, there's a diagnosis for like, for young people for the propensity to take food off of other people's plates. So now in a school system, they can't be disciplined for taking food off of somebody else's plates because they have a
What?
DSM diagnosis for taking food off of other people's plates.
Oh
It's
goodness.
literally like a diagnosis. And I think a lot of people, they want to be diagnosed because then it's not my fault. Now I don't have responsibility. And that might be controversial to say, but
Everything's your
diagnosis.
responsibility.
At a
Sorry.
certain
Like
point, yeah.
because here's the thing. What is You have to look at it, in my opinion, I look at it this way. Okay. Say you had a horrible upbringing, very traumatic things happen to you, awful genetics, like you have everything stacked against you, right? There is only one choice that is going to allow you to move forward. And that is if you say, hey, I can't control what happened to me. I'm not in control of how other people perceive me, what they did to me. This was all awful. This is not downgrading that. But what can I do now? Like as a however old, like I'm a 31-year-old person. What can I do now? What can I take into my hands to improve? And I think that when we do try to label or over label things and identify with them, that is so disempowering. And we have a team mental health counselor on our team, and I've talked to him about this. Like, what do you think about labels? Like, what do you think about diagnoses? And he honestly is like, I very rarely actually give a client a diagnosis because I find that in most cases, not all, but most, it does more harm than good. And he's like, the only time I really give it to someone is if I know that they're going to use this for the right reason, So again, this is not to say that if you get a diagnosis, that it's bad or anything like that, but it's like, try not to over identify this. It's just like your emotions, right? Like I have certain types of emotions that I feel a lot. I am not that emotion. I feel that emotion. Maybe I feel it more than other people, but I'm not that. And I think that when we get into that mindset, it is so easy. It even goes into what we're talking about with this. Like if I identify as someone who can't lose weight, or I identify as someone who has tried everything and everything has failed, I'm not going to be successful no matter what I try. I could try the perfect plan because subconsciously I am keeping myself at this lower level because I can't see that I can be above this.
Yeah.
So to go back to the research study, so that was in the dieting phase, and then the post-dieting phase. Basically, the only statistical difference that we saw was that the fat-free mass increased in the flexible dieting group, and we thought, well, this is really interesting. So now, mind you, we did not change their training. We just said, hey, keep everything the same. Again, hypothetically, like we can't control this, but we want to make sure that you're doing the same and report minutes spent resistance training and doing cardio. So we asked them to pretty much keep this consistent throughout the whole study, whatever they had been doing. And when we looked at that, we said, okay, minutes spent doing, exercise wasn't really any different statistically, any different. We looked at what they reported eating after. So basically because it was a post-diet period, so there was no intervention, but we would say, hey, just fill out a 3-day food log and give it back to us. When we looked at those, there wasn't really too many differences. I mean, there were some, but it wasn't, again, statistically really big of a deal. So really the only thing that we came up with, and actually this is, I consulted with a lot of people on this because I was like, what is going on? Like, this is just some fluke finding. We're not, I kind of wrote it off as like, never really, it doesn't really matter. Right. And I had actually consulted with Eric Helms about this during this process. And then it was actually, I think it was maybe even last year, like literally like it was like either last year or 2021, something like pretty recent, where he actually wrote about it in Mass, which is their monthly research review. And he wrote in there like a really interesting insight that he's like, he even said like, we had talked about this, but I hadn't thought of it in this way. So the people who had been tracking macros for those 10 weeks, they obviously had a better understanding of tracking. So when they were doing the reporting afterwards, they were probably having a much closer reporting as to what they were doing versus the group that didn't do that. So I think it was just kind of probably a byproduct of being used to tracking and reporting that we saw a little bit of a difference. I still don't hang my hat on that to say like, oh my gosh, this is going to help the most. I pretty much look at it as like, this study was a great representation of both things can work depending on where the individual is at, because I saw in real time as the researcher that some people were doing really, really great in one group and not doing great in the other, and then kind of vice versa. So it really opened my eyes to the idea that it matters much more where someone is on their journey, and looking at that as like a continuum and saying, okay, meal plans aren't bad, macros aren't bad. It depends on where someone is at. And when someone is first starting, it actually might be advantageous to have more structure for them and then eventually move to more flexibility. And I always try to use that term like structured flexibility and flexible restraint. But then interestingly enough, kind of as, I finished that in 2016, never ended up publishing it. And until we started rewriting some stuff back in like 2019, it is open access. So I always try to tell people that like I paid for this to be open access. So please, somebody fucking read this paper because I paid a lot of money for y'all to be able to read it.
I'm on PubMed right now. We're good.
Yes, go look it up. Go download it on every computer. I'm just kidding. But for real, you can put that in the show notes because if people are interested, they can read it. And I really, really wanted to hammer this point home. Like Dr. Campbell was like, I think everybody gets it. And I'm like, no, I need them to understand this because I was one of the people who was pushing this, and I need to make sure that people understand that my position has changed. So what I started to see was that I thought, back then, when I was seeing flexible restraint and rigid restraint in the literature, I was looking at that and saying rigid restraint is the meal plan group or more set food specific things. And flexible restraint must mean flexible dieting because there's more choice, there's more moderation. Because when we look at the flexible versus rigid restraint research, that's what it is. Flexible restraint is about moderation. It's not having off-limit foods, whereas rigid restraint is very categorized by black or white thinking. You can have this is forbidden, those types of things. So that makes sense. It does fall in line with the idea of meal plan versus macros. However, about 2018, 2019, I started to realize that my clients who had been tracking macros, experienced macro trackers, were having the same issues that I had read about as rigid restraint, like back then. I was like, hold up. Isn't this supposed to be flexible? Aren't we supposed to have this mindset that we can moderate and adjust things? Like that's the point of tracking macros. But I started to realize that people were using that as a crutch and they were applying rigid restraint to a flexible model. So really the restraint is not dependent on the diet. It's your mindset around the food. So I really wanted to make sure that that was so obvious in the paper. And I think that I really got the point home, hopefully. But I started to realize that even with macro tracking, we have to really make sure that we're practicing flexibility in this because you can become just as rigid. And then I was having the same issues with clients. Well, I couldn't track this, so I didn't know what to eat, or I didn't eat, or I overate. And it's like, wait, that's the whole point of tracking macros is you can sit down and be like, I don't know what this is, but I have an idea based on all of the years that I've been doing this. But what people do is they use this and they go, oh, well, that's not in here, so I don't know what this is now.
Yep.
And
this happens a lot with like meals out, restaurant meals, stuff that they're not really, like, let's say they go get a chicken parm from an Italian restaurant. Like, well, there's no chicken parm that fits this bill. I don't have no idea how to, it's like, just find a fucking chicken parm in Chronometer. Good luck. Assume how.
Just look at it like here. So I come at this from a different perspective slightly. So I grew up with an eating disorder. I was always used to looking at food, looking at labels, looking at things, but I don't know, a fucking smartphone, you know what I mean? So I just started to memorize kind of numbers, right? Which weird flex, but okay.
How many calories are in an egg? Tell us how many calories are in an egg.
So I don't do calories. I just do the
60.
The macros.
Yeah,
real
weird.
6 fat, 5 protein. Go
Yeah,
on.
generally. Anyways, so I started doing this like years ago, right? Like I'm some weirdo 8-year-old like looking in the pantry. But anyways, so I never, and then when I started to track food, when I started bodybuilding, I was doing the very typical, like, let's measure things out. I wasn't doing macros. It wasn't until about 2013 that I started tracking macros. And when I did that, I would look things up, but I write them down by hand. So I never would put into a tracker or a calculator and like zero it out. I would never scan things. I would never do that. I would just look at it once and I could usually remember, oh, this is about that. So for me, I never learned to rely on this as something like I can sit down and I can go, this looks about plus or minus this. But what people end up doing is they use things like their phone or a tracking app as like a crutch, and then they're not being aware of what the food, like what they're eating, how satiated they are, things like that. And I just started to realize, like, man, like this is just totally, like, I'm creating more of a problem, and like, while tracking macros, I think, is something that everybody should do at some point in their life. Like most people should do at some point in their life. I don't think that it needs to be a forever system. And most importantly, I think we need to be able to go in and out of it. I need you to be able to go through periods where we're tracking very rigidly because you have a goal. And I need you to be able to go through periods where we're not tracking at all and you don't completely fall off the rails. So that's how I've changed my perspective on that. And that's really what the study showed me in a strange, inadvertent way a few years later. But
So what's the best way? I'm just kidding. This is like, no matter what people say,
I'm like, what the
there's still, you're like, he didn't listen to fucking shit I said. But that's the problem too. Like, we're in this world, like, so with all that being said,
it's
what's
always
the
that
best way?
there is
And
no
I think what
best
you
way.
said about the perspective of things is so huge. Like, rules are either going to be freeing or restrictive. You can either be really upset about the rules and be focusing on the rules, that you're in this restrictive mindset, or you can look at the rules as allowing freedom. You're never going to be able to play a sport without rules. Without rules, there is no freedom. Nobody knows what they can and can't do. Without rules on the road, there is no freedom. You have to constantly panic. Where's this car going to go, or that car is going to go? And sometimes it's like, the macros and the tracking ways that we do it, instead of maybe looking up at these lines on the road, maybe we look at the guardrail that's off the side of the road a little bit. Like, hey, I went over the line. Doesn't mean I got to go drive into the woods. It's just this guardrail. It's this way to kind of keep us on track a little bit. But absolutely, I mean, we're huge on that, our mindset towards these things. And sometimes we get so stuck on the scale or so stuck on the macros that we're not paying attention, exactly like you said, to how we're feeling, how our energy is, how our satiety is, how our digestion is, all these other wins that we ignore because we're so stuck on a rule. We're so stuck on focusing on one thing that's so restrictive.
Yeah, and it's a surefire way to never be at a body composition that you can maintain.
Yeah.
And this conversation, of course, is going to be different depending on the type of client that we're talking about, right? Like, and I try to make this distinction very clear. If I'm working with a physique or a performance athlete who has to manipulate their body weight, this is going to be a very different conversation, because obviously the client who is doing, especially physique sports, you're pushing a weight at the top end of an off season that you probably don't really like. And you're pushing calories to a place that you maybe wouldn't like to maintain at, because then the extreme end is very extreme. So both ends are extreme, right? And especially if we're talking about a performance athlete, well, if we're manipulating weight, what are we manipulating this for a sport like powerlifting, where we have a 24-hour weigh-in where I can bloat you up 30 pounds? Okay. Are we talking about jiu-jitsu athlete who needs to weigh in 2 hours and then perform 6 to 8 rounds? Totally different, right? How we cut weight. But then if we're talking about a lifestyle client, totally different. We're never getting ideally to either of those extremes. But what ends up happening, I find, is that the lifestyle client almost does the extremes of the physique prep. They just don't have the body comp that looks like it. You know what I mean? They're going through these really restrictive diets, and then they're totally having these huge blowouts because they're not learning how to rely on these cues. And the problem is, this shit takes time. And to your kind of joke, there is no one way. And that's the beauty to me of coaching, right? Is that I can have a roster of clients who we all have similar goals, but I'm going to treat the tiny minutia a little bit different. Like the general things are all the same.
Yeah.
But like
the basics, the staples, the principles. Yes.
The foundation is the same, but like the nuance of like how we're going to apply this is going to be different week to week based on what's going on in their life and what all the other, their history, what they have in the future, their goals, like all of that stuff. And like, that's so fun to me, but somebody has to be willing and ready to process that and not ask that question, like those types of questions. Well, what's the best way? Because it's like, well, that thinking is what has gotten you here. And I hate to tell you that, but it's like, it's not going to get better until we work on that.
Yeah.
Well, and especially the season that we're in right now, and this is what we started off with before, is we have a lot of people now that are starting to get into this like DEFCON 5 panic mode of holy shit, it's almost April. I have to be in a bikini in 65 or 75 days. What am I going to do from now until then to completely overhaul my physique? Now,
I feel like I want to cue the Let It Go song from Frozen right now.
Please don't. The song's atrocious.
Let it
So-
go. I'll just sing it. I'll just sing it. All right, guys. Be
Oh,
quiet.
that's better.
Let
I mean,
it go.
I
Keep talking. I'll just sing it lightly in the background.
can you just leave for like 5 minutes?
What is
Back?
75 hard button? Just
Yeah,
put that in there.
And so there are, I don't ever want to dissuade people from trying, because I think that's probably, and that's another point of disempowerment that I would never want to give people, but I want to at least empower them with the information that can allow them to make an educated decision about what path they're going to choose. Because let's say you're 220-pound, 5'2" Mrs. Jones with 40% body fat, and you're trying to fit into a bikini in 75 days. We have to set some realistic expectations here on where you're starting from and where you're trying to go.
And they're the biggest killer. Unrealistic and unmet expectations are the biggest killer. Because as soon as you don't have them, I quit, there's something wrong with me, all that stuff.
Right. And as opposed to setting Mrs. Jones up for success by saying, hey, listen, I still want you to attempt this and do the best you can with it, but understand that one dieting cycle is not going to get you to where you want to go. It may take you 10 years of dieting periodically, from maintenance to loss, from maintenance to loss, from maintenance to loss, repeatedly, to get to the physique. I mean, it's taken me 25 years to get here, and I still have a piss poor physique.
He had his shirt off before you came on, Laurin.
Yeah, it was just full nipping, and he was not impressed.
Very, very pink.
You're like lap spread, like, hey, is this how I should do the podcast?
We usually do it in the nude, but I figured with you, we'd have to tone it down.
Yeah.
But like,
first time,
I don't want people to be frustrated to think that, well, I dieted for 12 weeks and I didn't get to where I want to go. It's like, yeah, look at where you started from. So the question I want to ask you, and for you to paint a complete picture of this, is there a subset of the population? Is there an archetype, or what do you call them? An avatar of client who does have the ability to drastically see a body composition change that might be favorable in a short period of time? And what would those qualifications look like?
I would say the biggest qualification is a substantial amount of muscle mass and a large training history. So the people that you are looking at, right, like that clients will be like, how does this person always have abs? And I'm like, well, I have one of the girls who works at First Form, or works with First Form, Claire Thomas, amazing physique, amazing athlete. She's been a high level athlete her whole life, you know, like she was a D1 track athlete. So that's up until college, you know what I mean? So she, all the stuff she did beforehand. Right. So anybody, if you are playing, if you're a top level athlete, right, soccer, gymnastics, track, so whatever it might be, right, you've been doing this since you were 3-4 years old up until, you know, maybe semi-professionally, let's just say early 20s. That person is going to have a very different physique when they're 35 than the client who, to your point, 5'2", 220, 40% body fat, hasn't really consistently trained. So if Claire was like, you know what, I'm feeling like I want to kind of get a little bit leaner, no problem, right?
Yeah.
She probably has a pretty responsive body. Now, I don't know that, you know, like, I don't know. I haven't.
And on top of that, that these people have a history of showing up for themselves. You add that to the mix.
Yes, it's a lot easier to say, hey, I'm going to, like when I did 75 hard, and I did not even do it nearly as hardcore as a lot of people do it. You know what I mean?
75 hard?
I know, it's like, there's the button, but I'm just using that as this example because I have not done anything structured, like diet wise, since I got off stage in 2018.
Yeah.
That was my last time. I said, I am done for right now. My body needs a break. I have literally dieted for 20 years of my life. Like, it was like 20 years is enough. Like, I need to just figure out what the fuck I want to be doing with this. Yeah. And for the first time in a very long time, I have worked on these skills where I can regulate myself. I have a body composition that I like and I enjoy. But even something like that, where I was just like, honest, I was like, I just need to eat more. Like, I need to eat more. Like, that's what I need to be doing for this challenge program. But I immediately switched back on, like, oh, all the tasks are going to get done because I know how to do that. Like, okay, it's, oh, people are like, was it hard? And I'm like, I didn't think about it. I just did it. Like, you know, like, because I've had years and years and years of, you know, I showed horses competitively. I ran track, I ran cross country. I was a bodybuilder for 8 years. Like I have that, you know, like
Yeah.
I understand that. So like, that was a great point to be like, yes, it is. Do you physiologically have this foundation? And then also, do you have that mentality for showing up for yourself? And you've proven to yourself that you can do these things. So I think that what ends up happening is people either set too small of goals that are so easy that they're kind of like, ah, fine, whatever. Or they set goals that are so far that they're like, well, I can't see this. I don't really know how to get there, without any of these medium goals that are kind of stretching you, but still within reason. That doesn't mean that you can't have large goals. Like you have to have large goals. You know, Mrs. Jones have to set like, I want to have a body comp that looks like this, but how are we going to get there? Right. Because if you don't have any in between, saying that you want to be here is just literally a pipe dream. So I would say that the only person who's going to be able to make huge drastic changes, but that doesn't mean that you can't make, like, if you actually dedicated the next 12 weeks to making progress, you would actually make a lot of progress, you know?
So tell 5'2", 220 Miss Jones,
Mhm.
the summer's in, we'll call it 3 months.
Yep. Summer. Yeah. 3
What's a
months.
realistic? Obviously, they're not going to have some of these
Wow.
huge changes. They're not going to show all this muscle if they haven't been lifting at all. But
Yeah. So
even
weight
just
loss
to
is going to be
give,
pretty high.
yeah, give it a glimpse of what is realistic, that we're reducing the amount of bounce back, because
Yeah.
somebody could drop a ton of weight in the next 3 months,
Yeah. You could drop 50
gain it all
pounds, but
back, and they're
I mean,
used to that cycle. Just to even for
someone,
that person
honestly,
listening.
someone in that setting, because, you know, again, that is going to be so high from probably their settling point, could upwards, I would say safely be about 20 pounds. I mean, that's still high,
Awesome.
I would
Yep.
consider, but I would really say kind of outside of that, we're really pushing what is going to happen after. And as I talked about with my grad school research and just really what I harp on all the time, we talk so much about dieting in the space, but nobody talks about afterwards. Like, what the fuck else? What is happening afterwards? And that is even the perception of the client coming in. They're just like, oh, you'll help me with this goal. Okay. It's like, yeah. Whoa. Like this goal. And then the next thing is also a goal, right? Maintaining the weight loss is a harder goal because it's way less exciting.
I'm
There's
just picturing like a drug dealer who keeps selling drugs, getting arrested, ending up in jail. And he's like, I got to sell drugs again because last time I sold drugs, I made all this money, but you ended up in jail. It doesn't matter. And then they get arrested again. And then they get arrested again. And then they get arrested again. It's like at a certain point, don't we want to stay out of jail? Can we try to maybe make money a little slower so that we can stay out of jail?
There are people in this space, and every space, it's not just fitness space, it's the world. There's people who capitalize on, no, but it's this one thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you didn't do this, that's why you didn't get there. So then there's still that like hope of like, oh, well, I fucked it up because I don't have
8
this
carrots
or I have that.
glycemic index.
Yeah. And it's like, no. And I always try to use this phrase, like, give me a year, you know, like realistically, if somebody was like, I'm going to commit a year, we can do a little bit of a pre-diet situation. We can do a diet. We can reverse up and maintain. We can hit another diet. Like we can do a lot in a year. Right. And there's like that phrase, like people underestimate what they can do in
10 weeks versus 10 years versus 10 weeks.
They overestimate what they can do in 10 weeks.
That thing. But that is so true, right? Because like there is like, we see these big goals and it's like, oh my gosh, this is so hard. But it's like, I would try, like, what else are we doing? We're just spinning our wheels. And actually, say you decided to do a 3-month crash diet, right, for the beach. Now you went from 220 to 150 or 170. Okay. Woo, crazy weight loss. But now you're 230. Like, that's not what we want. You know what I mean? And that is the dieting, that is the yo-yo dieting cycle that we don't want to experience. So I would say that, yeah, I mean, I hate giving numbers, especially in that context, but let's just say around 20 pounds, right? That could be probably pretty reasonable.
Pound and a half a week.
Yeah, we're talking. Given that is a pretty high amount of body fat, there's going to be some water weight. And for that person, I would say that, like, listen, protein and resistance training, like, number one, like most people are not eating enough protein. And I know that you know, people are always talking about, oh, I'm eating 1,000 calories. Well, eating 1,000 calories of carbs and fats is very different than eating 1,000 calories of protein, carbs and fats, you know? And the lack of training. And this doesn't mean that people need to go out and start like training like crazy, but like 3 times a week of resistance training and, you know, doing some daily movement with like walking. Like this is something I've changed my mind on a ton because, again, coming from the competitive bodybuilding space and the evidence-based air quotes space, it's like, well, if you do cardio in the off season, like you're going to be damaged and you're not going to be able to lose weight. And now I'm not talking about hammering people with cardio in an off season, because that's not going to facilitate muscle building. And that's also not going to give us any leverage when we are dieting, but we can hit 10,000 steps, y'all. Like we're not eating away muscle if we're going on, a 20 or 30 minute walk a day.
Yeah.
And you're going to feel better. You're going to be able to regulate, you're going to feel better. You're going to regulate your blood glucose better. You're going to have better digestion. You're going to get sun exposure. There's just literally no downsides to this, So if we can get people to have a daily movement regimen, resistance train a few days a week and get some protein in there, like that is going to be so, so key. And, there's really no way to hack it. I mean, there's ways that we can make it easier, and that's going to depend on where the individual's at. But I really think that like those foundations are so key, and that is not talked about in especially the aggressive weight loss space, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I think as you're talking, and you're describing the cycle that people get into, I really think that there is just a huge fear that people have of their life changing. And it's, I can do this for a short period of time. And that's what I'm willing to sacrifice, maybe social life, parties, friends, food. And that's the cycle they get into. There's this true fear of what will my life be like, because everybody I hang out with, they eat and drink every weekend, going out and doing all this stuff. And that might be something that people really got to look at. Otherwise, why do you keep falling in this? Why does it have to be so quick? What's the fear in taking your time?
Well, the fear, it's very simple. It's
the commitment.
Most people are entering into extreme dieting protocols because of desperation. They've neglected some level of self-care for long enough to where they finally read something on Instagram that motivated them for the moment. They saw somebody who lost a bunch of weight that they went to school with, and like, well, why the fuck can she do it and I can't? And they're so disappointed in themselves that it drives them to making unreasonable decisions. Because I know
they're not afraid of lifestyle change and maybe losing friends and maybe having to be that person that goes to the gym. If they're not afraid of that, why does it need to happen so fast? If they're not afraid of those things.
Listen, you and I put on 15 or 20 pounds, and we can say that we're disappointed in ourselves, but we don't look in the mirror and break down in tears most of the time. I mean, I do. I cry myself to sleep daily, but I'm also highly emotionally intelligent. But you have to think about the population of women that we're talking, because this is typically more of a female versus male problem.
Yes.
Women are much more tied into their body image. They're told they're supposed to be a certain size. God forbid you have any muscle mass on you. Why are you not the smallest version of yourself? What the fuck is wrong with you? And this is what's beating them in the back of the head when they're making these decisions. And then all you need is one day of overeating, being bloated, putting on your work clothes in the morning, feeling like dog shit. And then you don't even want to show up to work that day.
Yeah, that's that reminder of I'm a failure.
Then boom,
it reinforces that thought process again.
It sparks the extreme calorie cut and the overexercise, which then starts to lead to some acute change, which then starts to become, oh wow, this is working, until it doesn't, and now we're back in again. So let's take a different avatar, Laurin, because I think it's easy to talk about 225 with 40% body fat.
Mrs. Jones.
Let's talk about 30% body fat, 150 pounds, 3 to 5 classes a week. That's a much fucking tougher nut to crack. What can that person expect?
Yeah. So for this person, I would say that we probably still have room to make some fat loss. It's certainly not going to be as much, and we're probably not going to see as many weight changes, because if this person is at, let's say a normal-ish weight, right? Like if you are overweight, you are going to be able to lose weight easier. Like the number is going to change, obviously. 150, 30% body fat means that you pretty under muscled though, right? So this person is probably going to go through more of that recomp phase where maybe the scale isn't dropping too much, but now if we maybe sub out a class or two, we add in some walks and we add in some resistance training and we tweak their diet, now we're maybe not going to have a lot of scale progress, but we're going to have a lot of physical change.
But I don't get it. If I burn 500 calories in an Orange Theory class, how will it be better for me to skip one of those a week?
Well, so, again, this is not there's no perfect science, right? Like I wish CCO was everything, but it's just not, and if it was, like it is, but it isn't, right? Like, yes, calories matter, calorie output matters, but if you are constantly just stressing your body with that, but no other stimulus for growth and really body recomposition in this case, you're not going to have the physique that you want. And that's where I feel like a lot of people end up, is like, now, yeah, maybe they have lost some weight, but they really haven't lost as much body fat, and they have lost any of the muscle that they did have. And that physique is one that you just don't want. Like, even if people, like, most people don't want an under muscled physique. They maybe don't want to be bulky, right?
We're okay with skinny fat here. You can say skinny fat.
Like, I mean, but yeah, like, nobody wants to be skinny fat, like
I don't think so.
Yeah,
no,
they think they do if they're
they think
really
they do.
overweight, and then they get there and they're like, why am I still not happy? Yeah.
They don't. Like, they look at, like, if somebody's like, I want to look like this, and it's like, yeah, that person has more muscle than you.
Yeah.
That's why they look like that.
That's why I hate those before and afters. Like, who's the powerlifting guy, the big strongman guy who was really overweight? He was the
Hafthor,
the one that was in, I think, Game
Eddie
of
Hall.
Thrones.
Oh, Hafthor Bjornsson.
Hapthor wasn't over. I mean,
he was
Thor.
485 pounds at one point.
Yeah, but
he's the guy
like
who lost
6'8" and a strong man.
Yeah, and he lost all the weight.
But now he's
Right?
doing
Now-
like jujitsu, and he's fucking lean as shit.
So there's this before and after picture. I remember when
He's
when
probably
he-
still like 400 pounds though.
and he's like
6'8".
jacked, and I'm going. People looked at him like he was just this fat guy who was strong, and then he loses all this body fat and he's jacked, and then these guys think that's what I'm gonna look like when I lose fat. And I'm like, no, you're not. This
No.
guy's got 20 years of lifting weights. He has a structure that was built underneath this. He lost fat to reveal this. If you have
Yeah.
nothing to
Yes.
reveal, you're just losing fat. And if you're not lifting weights, you're never sending the message to the brain to keep muscle. So when you're in your deficit, your body's gonna be like, oh, we don't need that
Yeah.
shit. And it's gonna get rid of even any of the muscle that you did have. But
And
anyway.
protein as well. Protein
And
intake,
protein, yeah.
obviously, is huge, right?
Yeah.
Like, pretty much the research consistently shows over and over and over again, and we all have seen in practical cases with coaching, it is protein and resistance
Yes.
training are the two biggest drivers. And if we can maintain, if somebody can maintain, Dr. Campbell was just talking about this actually at the event that me, Casey, and Chanel hosted. He spoke, and one of the things he was talking about is, in their lab, pretty much if they can keep someone's muscle mass while they're dieting, which they do through resistance training and a high enough protein intake, they won't see any changes, like statistically significant changes with their RMR readings. And then they're not going to see, these, like, the things go hand in hand, you know what I mean? So it's like,
So there's no maladaptation.
there's less maladaptation, especially there. So, like, keep RMR, resistance train, high protein, you're going to keep your muscle mass.
Do
And
they
then, as
see a
we know, a lot of
difference- I was gonna say, do they see a difference in if it's spaced out every 3 hours for muscle protein synthesis, or just total protein they're looking at with that stuff? If you know,
they're looking at total protein.
Total
So
protein, okay.
we have like now at the lab, like, nutrition coaches. So basically, when somebody is coming in, now they have guidance in terms of if they're saying, hey, we need someone to hit this much, they're going to have some guidance in terms of that. So it's much more sophisticated than when I was there. We were just like, hey, it's just us. Now they have a lot more. The lab is doing really, really great stuff. But yeah, it's just one of those things that people often, they just want to slash calories, and they're not even thinking about protein. And I think it's so hard because, like, we're so far removed from that, right? Because it's like, I would never go somewhere and not eat protein. I would never have a meal and not have protein. I would never do really anything and not have protein. I would never, but
that sounds disordered.
Yeah, it's just, it's just a part of what we do, but even me, like, if I'm not trying, I will still not eat enough. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
it's gotta be absolutely.
like,
I could have
you
protein
gotta-
with every meal, and I still am like, shit, I was short by 80
yeah,
because
I have
didn't have
protein
the
powder every
portion
day.
sizes. Yeah, absolutely.
I have protein powder every day because it makes it easier, you know what I mean, and more
Yeah.
palatable to get down. And I still have to make sure that I'm meal prepping and eating enough meals. It's not like by accident, so even for someone with, like, all of us, even with this extensive knowledge here, like, we still have to try a little bit. But going back to that kind of
Yeah.
going back to that, like, social pressure of stuff, right? That is why having this flexible mindset and this flexible restraint around food is so important, because the goal is yes, you're going to have to
for sure.
modify yourself around your friends and your choices, but that doesn't mean that you never get to go do that. But people need to learn how to say no. Like, you can go out with your friends and have 2 beers or 2 glasses of wine or have a piece of pizza, but you don't get to have 12 beers and a whole pizza. You got to say no. And if people are making fun of you, trust me, they really don't give a fuck. They're saying that, they're making a comment because that's just what they do. You know, like we've all been there. You know, like people just make comments, but nobody's going home like, oh man, she only had one piece of pizza. What? No, they're just saying that kind of out of like a gut reaction, you know.
Yeah.
It's not anything that anyone is really, and if they are being malicious, then that's weird. So fuck them. You
Fuck
know,
them.
like who
And
gives a fuck?
we've talked about it before too. I mean, like people who are dealing with that kind of stuff, they have to deliver their information better. You cannot be going out with friends saying, I'm trying to be good. I'm trying not to drink. I don't want to drink. I'm not having any tonight. I've told clients, like, pretend you're fucking sick. Pretend you're completely hungover from last night. Be like, I can't have any. I'm so hungover from last night. Nobody bothers you when you just say, I'm not drinking tonight. Why not? I just don't feel like it.
Yeah.
You just
like,
deliver
I
it with
just don't want to.
confidence. I just don't want to. Yeah.
And if people harp on you for that, it's like, okay, maybe that's a deeper conversation, you know. But I think there is a point that people have to get better at saying no and more comfortable at that as well. And that is a big part of this process.
Yeah.
And so to go back to that avatar of someone who, you know, maybe isn't at an overweight position, but they're maybe over fat and under muscled, they really need to start putting an emphasis on resistance training. Again, this is not to go, you know, I need to go do CrossFit 7 days a week. I'm talking 3 days a week, full body.
Slow down.
Yeah.
Control the eccentric.
45
nice
minutes.
And easy.
Let's get in there. Like you're going to have a big stimulus from doing that.
Yeah.
You know, like the stimulus
passed
that someone
out yesterday squatting.
Squats are just always hard. Let's be honest.
Like
when you're first starting, you get to do a little bit and get a lot out of it.
Yeah.
When you're intermediate and you're trying to grow, you really got to do more. But once you've hit this kind of threshold, like, and you're happy with where you're at, it's actually pretty easy to maintain, you know.
It's very easy to maintain.
Realistically, I can maintain 3 days a week lifting. You know what I mean? I'm not going to see a lot of growth.
No,
but I can maintain. You know what I'm saying?
We talked about that forever ago of like the people that this is their lifestyle. Most people would be surprised how we're not lifting that much. 3 days a week, 4 days, maybe. Like for the average person who has a history of lifting, we're not going 6-7 days a week.
No, I mean, if I wanted to for a goal, you know, again, it's going to just depend on what you want to be doing. But like, it's pretty cool when you're actually able to like just maintain, you know.
But that's maintenance and flexibility is earned, and that's a shitty concept for a lot of novices and intermediates to understand.
Yes,
T-shirt idea.
And I had referenced, we had done a podcast yesterday, and I had referenced Poliquin, and Poliquin had always talked about like earning people's calories, earning your carbs. It's a shitty thing to say out loud because a lot of laymen's don't want to accept that idea. And then people in the disordered eating community will be like, well, you can't tell people they should earn their food. Yes, if they want to go and fuck around on the weekends. Yes, if they want to have more flexibility. You better have the muscle mass and the activity level to justify it. Because if you don't,
say earn it
there's
for
a consequence.
Else.
But there's a consequence to it. And
well,
you have to be okay with that consequence.
These incel guys who think that they should just be automatically granted attention from women. Like you sit in your mother's basement and play video games, earn their attention, earn that car that you want to drive. We say that for everything else.
Yeah.
But then it's like earn your calories or earn your carbs is like, that's triggering. That can lead to, you know, whatever.
Listen, and I get it. You know, I've worked with people who've had disordered eating. I've worked with people who have had eating disorders. I've had an eating disorder myself. I've gone through a lot of different things, and you can't have your cake and eat it too. You know, I hate to break it to everybody, you know, and at the end of the day, every choice has a consequence, good or bad. And we all have to be like, that is the law of nature and of the world. And that is never going to change. If you do this, you're probably going to get this reaction. You know what I mean? And you have to be okay. I'm fine with it. If somebody's like, hey, listen, this weekend came up and things started to happen and it was Friday and I had, you know, went to the pool and had some, you know, had some drinks, but I chose that I wanted to do that.
Yeah.
Very different discussion than, wow, things kind of got out of hand on Friday. I don't know what happened. And then, you know, everybody kind of went out. So I just ate with them. And then I already kind of messed up on Friday. So then Saturday and Sunday was a total wash. And then now I feel really bad about myself Monday. I did extra cardio and then now it's Tuesday. Yeah. Totally different than someone. Totally I'm like, if you want to go do something, you have to own it and say, this is what I am choosing to do. That has a very different signature for how it affects your body. And that's going back to our larger conversation of, you know, hey, we have 3 months to get ready. Whatever you decide to do, you have to realize that this action or inaction has a consequence. And you're the one who is deciding that. As a coach, we are I always say, like the detached observers and the guide to your life. We can say, hey, here's this protocol, here's this program, here's what we think would be best, here's what we would try to avoid. But ultimately, it is your decision to execute on it. And I cannot force anybody to make a change. you have to want that change for yourself. I can help guide you through this, and I'm honored to guide you through this, but you have to want to be doing this as well. And you also have to be realistic. And if you want to do something, you got to take ownership of that. And I don't, if you do that, then you can't say, oh, well, this happened, so I don't know why the scale didn't go down. No. I did this, so I realized this. That's when I know someone's made progress. Hey, listen, this came up, I realized that's probably why the scale didn't go down this week. You're right.
Yep.
Love that. And if we're on the same page there, then we can actually start to make progress now. So I think that all this does come back to this expectation, and people are just sold through the media and social media these fucking false claims of, oh, well, because of this story, you just got to do this one thing. And then it's like, I don't know how we're ever going to erase this. Like, I always have this view of like, things are getting better, but then like something will happen. I'm like, oh, we're not.
I'm too fucking cynical. And what drives me crazy is when I see all these coaches that are like, lose 30 pounds eating all your favorite foods. I'm like, what the fuck universe do you live in? If like, I ate my favorite foods, I would put on 30 pounds tomorrow.
and this is,
you can have one bite of each.
Like,
who can have
this
one
is coming
have you
from
ever
someone
done one line of blow?
Oh
no, you haven't.
Man,
only when I'm hanging out with you and you hog it all. Anyway,
like I did literally, I've devoted my entire coaching career to this. I did research on this. Like literally, this is like what I would say that I do. You can't do that. Like, it's just, and so here's like the earning thing. Yeah. I want
you to address that explicitly so we can just shut it down, put it to bed, and people who are listening to this can really understand that you can't just do whatever the fuck got you here.
No. So the idea, what ended up happening was, years back, the very, very rigid protocols were coming out, right? Especially from the competitive scene. So like, here's 5 foods, have 2 noodles and a fucking half of a date, and all this broccoli, you're like, oh my God, what's going on here? So then the pendulum swung to IFYM, right? If I track my macros, I have Pop-Tarts and egg whites, I'm going to get fucking shredded. Yes, you are, for sure. But then what ended up happening was, oh, well, this is disordered because now you're tracking every single thing. So just eat whatever you want. And then we swung to intuitive eating. And you should listen to your body's cues and all these things, which I understand and appreciate. And that's what I do now. But I only do that
because you put the work in tracking and learning.
Because of years and years and years of learning how to you learn how to moderate yourself from being diligent with certain things. So again, I always just try to, like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't just get to eat whatever you want without any type of restraint. That's why I like to use flexible restraint.
That's why I always get 2 cakes.
And there's restraint. Yeah, just in case, you're like, fuck, I gotta have 2. I'm gonna get 3 cakes next time just to one up you because I'm competitive.
Have it, eat it, smash it.
Yeah, exactly. Perfect. So it's one of these things like flexible restraint is both components, right? We have to have some kind of restraint on what we're doing, but we have to have flexibility with how we achieve that. So when I've competed before, right, I love to tell this story because I'm like, listen, people are, oh, I couldn't do this. No. You didn't want to. And that is fine. But don't use that. Don't say that to yourself mentally. I couldn't do this, because now you're creating the self-fulfilling prophecy. I did a show in 2017 in Italy. So I'm going to Northern Italy for a show because I thought, why not? This would be fun. You know what I mean? Like, this is a cool perk of being a pro. You get to travel and do shows. I go to Italy, and I had gone to Australia the year before, and like, they're nutso about like, you can't bring anything in, you know what I mean? So everybody's bringing their food, it's all getting thrown away. So I'm like, I'm not gonna fucking waste my time with that, So, we're getting over there, and I'm like hawking down like tuna packets and like untoasted Ezekiel bread, which you guys know that is not ideal. And we're on the plane. There's like no water either. They're like, fuck your water. And my mom, like, I'm just like over here, my mom's like, my God, do you like really love bodybuilding? Like, this is so gross. But she's always supportive, she's always down. So I bring a few things with me, but for the most part, my last few days of my competition, peaking for the show, I had to eat in Italy. I'm eating in Italy, mind you. I obviously don't speak Italian. They don't give 2 fucks about people's diets. They don't like, it's not like over here where you're like, hey, could you sub this out? They're like, no. No. So pretty much for every meal, I had like chicken, potatoes, and I just assumed that there was obviously oil on there, you know what I mean? And then I had to kind of estimate based on the taste, the saltiness, and then I would either add stuff or not, right? And that was how I peaked. And it was actually one of the best shows that I ever did. And I'm like, if I could peak for a bodybuilding show in Italy, like, you can go on a work trip for 2 days. Like, it might not be easy, it might not be ideal, but like, you have 10 choices. You have 3 choices. What's the best choice? Let's make the best choice out of what we have. If we have a sandwich, let's take off half of the bread. Let's try to, like, you know what I mean? Bring protein powder for your 3rd meal before dinner. So we have extra, like little tiny things. It's like, if you don't want to do it, that's fine. But then you can't say when summer gets here, oh, fuck. So you have to, like, the idea that we just get to do whatever. To that point, I think what started to frustrate me a lot with that was the community who was saying that was very unironically all of the people who had disordered eating and had tracked for many years. I'm like, that would be like me saying I can just eat whatever I want now, because technically I eat whatever I want.
It's like somebody who was cheated on telling their friend, oh, he's cheating on you, he's cheating on you, he's cheating on, like, they had the disordered eating, and now it's like they're telling you every possible thing that you're doing. That's disordered, that's disordered, that's disordered.
But they've gone through periods of tracking for a long time. So, like, I could never say after all these years of doing this that, like, I look at food and I know what's in it. That's the reality. People who haven't done that don't know that. So it's like we're harming the people that we're trying to help with this ideology, because it really is an ideology. It's not really even a system of thinking. Like, when, like, intuitive eating as a whole, I appreciate it. Again, it's something that I use and recommend, but
you earn
it. All the way over here. Like, we got a lot of steps before we can get there. So that's what blows my mind consistently, is the people who are sharing this message are the people who have a lot of food education and experience. Like, you don't get to, like, just leave that part out. You don't get to leave the part out that you were an RD and you've studied this for 6.5 years. You don't get to leave out the part that you were a competitive bodybuilder. You've tracked your food for 10 years. Like, that's a key part of this. That's a little asterisk for the conversation. You know,
how about the other element of the equation, which is we don't live in an environment conducive to intuitive eating, because everything is cheap and hyper palatable.
Intuitive eating got you into the position where now you're trying to learn how to eat intuitively. Like, intuitive eating got you to 220, Mrs. Jones. Mrs. Jones, so, like, I feel bad for your client. I mean, she's in every conversation we have.
I love Mrs. Jones. She looks great. Great client to work with. But no, like, for real, like, it really is a serious conversation, and it really just bothers me because people need help, and the people who are hearing that message are being harmed by it. And obviously, like, you know, I use that word lightly, but, you know, they are not getting the help that they need because of that kind of messaging. And that's just feeding into, oh, of course, well, that makes me feel good. Well, that's not going to get us anywhere. We can get there. That is the goal. But the goal needs to be prefaced with some time before that. And it's just, it really is frustrating. So the pendulum always swings somewhere, but it's like, could we just fucking get somewhere in the middle for once? I don't know.
But the middle doesn't sell coaching.
Well,
I was watching Ted Lasso and his therapist in Ted Lasso. If you didn't watch that, I was laughing, crying. I haven't watched it. Everybody's been talking about it. I watched season 2 the other day.
I don't even know
in one day. So. It's fantastic.
You're a fucking loser. You just lay there on your couch
all day.
Television.
I called out of work and I laid, and it was rejuvenating. I've never done that before. It was rejuvenating. I felt fantastic.
Called out of work. I'm responsible for young minds, and I'm laying on the couch.
I'm a high school teacher.
Great.
Okay, I was like,
with perfect. So neglect all those young developing minds and just go do whatever the fuck you want.
Fuck them out. It was beautiful. It's because of them that I needed that day, and I watched anyways. So
I hope they're listening and they're like, God, my teacher sucks.
Some of them do. They just want to find out if I talk about drugs or not. They're like, come on, tell us what drugs you did. I'm like, yeah. They're like, which ones? I'm like, correct.
All of them.
No. So the therapist said something about, however she phrased it, you can't be a mentor without first being a tormentor, like a tormentor. So
I was like a
it's kind of sounded a little Harry Potter for a second, the way I said a tormentor or something. But you can't be a mentor without first being a tormentor. And that's kind of what you're saying. Even like as the coach, you're trying to help these people, and you're going to go through hard times. You're going to be telling this person and calling them out on their bullshit and trying to experiment with what strategy is going to be the best. And it's going to be maybe a little tormenting. So even as somebody's going through the change, and if you are choosing to work with a coach, which research shows from your master's program that having a coach increases results with everything.
Results.
Yes. On top of all the other protocol. But to encourage them, and for any of those people that you're working with somebody, understand that they might torment you for a little bit. And even in a positive way, they're tormenting you because they're holding you accountable. They're calling you out on stuff. You're trying different things and whatever. But yeah,
Absolutely.
Anyway, torment.
I want to ask you one last question before we let
she
you go,
has
because
to
I don't
go.
want to
She
take
has
up too
places
much
to
of your
be.
time. Your
I gotta
view,
get hammered.
She's gonna start drinking.
I'm going to a Goose concert tonight. It's gonna get weird.
Goose?
Goose.
I don't know what the fuck that is.
I don't know what that is either.
That's why I said it's gonna get weird. Mind your business, dude. I'm sorry, it's not DJ Khalid or whoever you listen to.
It's
right?
Khalid. Thank you.
Khalid.
So I wanted to ask you what your
cool
view
Tampa
is
music.
On the functional medicine space, because
oh
Jesus
God.
Christ, part 2 next week. All right.
Yeah.
No, but just a very quick, like, obviously we have Western medicine and we have this like really big jump off. And the reason why I ask you is because you interact with a lot of these people either through your coaching, through your speaking.
Just say it's good.
Give me some of the things that you think are benefits, and give me some of the things that you think are costs when it comes to functional.
So I would say, as an overarching theme, yeah, I kind of am in a lot of different groups, right? Like, and I'm because I'm pretty open to a lot of things, right? Like, I can take things from people that I like and dislike and use them kind of equally, right? And not everything's for everybody, right? Like, everybody, like, we all have different things that work for us. And if there's one thing that I've learned in all my years of coaching and working with individuals, is that most things work. It's just going to depend on the person, right? And it's going to depend on that coaching interaction. So there are some things that are pretty overtly harmful, but they're kind of few and far between, so it's like, what's going to work for that individual? But as a blanket statement, I would say that there are a lot of positives to a more kind of holistic, integrated approach, right? My one major downside and flaw that I see kind of consistently throughout this community, though, is that they like to take one thing and run with it and like to go, well, here's a few symptoms. You must have this. Well, that's a pretty quick fucking diagnosis, if you ask me, right? And now, to be fair, Western medicine can do the same thing. They somehow don't do it as much with like the hormonal and metabolic stuff. They love to do it with the mental health stuff. That's my favorite. Oh, hey, here's a 5-question quiz. Do you have ADHD? Well, probably fucking yeah. Like, I mean, this like everybody's gonna have this, like, based on this.
If I could prescribe you this drug, I could find out if you have it in
less
than 5 questions.
People literally ask me all the time. They're like, "Oh, are you diagnosed with?" I'm like, "Yeah, I probably got all of them, but no, I don't have a formal diagnosis because, again, to come full circle, what's the point? Like, does it change my life to know that I have ADHD or not? Like, it's pretty obvious. You talk to me for 5 minutes, you probably do.
Yeah, the question is, do you want Adderall or not? That's the only question.
That's the only question. And the answer is a resounding, I don't need that. So no.
Yeah.
But so Western medicine loves to like kind of avoid a lot of the symptomatic things in terms of like, what a lot of the holistic and integrative people stuff talk about with like gut health and hormones. But to counter that, they love to just be like, yeah, you got these few things. It's this, take 15 supplements. And it's like, whoa. We like haven't even talked about some of the others. So I feel like they can be a little quick to be prescriptive, and they can be a little bit too what is the word that I'm looking for? A little bit too specific. Like, yep, you have this, like pinpoint it. Oh yeah, you got this. And it's like, well, I feel like we kind of need a little bit more information here. So that would be my kind of overarching consensus with it, is that I do think that there's a lot of pros. But I do think that there can be cons in that sense. And I feel like as a general theme, I kind of see that a lot. And the more sciencey brain of me is kind of like, well, we need to find out this first, and we need to try this. Like, I'm big on like, let's try this one thing, try it for a few weeks, and then we'll reassess, and then we'll do this, and then we'll reassess. I don't need to throw 15 things at you at once, because then I don't know what worked.
Yeah.
And then I also like, that could have just been a total waste. So I feel like that group, not one person in particular, this is talking about the whole kind of community, can be a little bit quick to prescribe things. And, with a lot of kind of generalized stuff like, oh, you bloated sometimes? Well, you must have SIBO. It's like, well, fuck, that was a pretty big jump. You know what I mean? Like, that was a pretty big jump. Have we talked about this person's sleep?
SIBO.
It's always SIBO. Have we talked about their sleep? Have we talked about their, their sorry, I'm like losing my voice. There's so many podcasts this week. Their sleep, their stress levels. What are they eating? When are they eating? What's going on at work? What's like there's a lot of reasons as to why this could be happening. And maybe it is SIBO, but like, why don't we go through some other things, like a lot of things before we get there? So that would be my TLDR.
That's perfect. I love that. I mean, that's actually my view of it as well. I just wanted to ask because I know you do interact with a lot of those people. So do I. And I affiliate myself to certain professionals and clinics because I do need to have a place to refer tough cases to. But if we're not addressing some of the big rocks, like let's not start throwing fucking your broken metabolism, your broken hormones, and your broken gut health on people.
None of that stuff's going to be fixed until lifestyle's addressed anyway. I mean, some of the supplements can help accelerate the recovery process at best. So it doesn't matter. It's like, oh, cool. Get your GI pill, your charcoal activator. You still can't eat fucking McDonald's while you're taking it all to try to fix the problem. So it's just like,
and if you're a fucking basket case and you can't navigate any stressful situation, like we're not going to be able to do anything. So there's definitely a lot of layers and not my first line of defense, but definitely one that is integrated depending on where the individual's at.
Yeah. This is a great conversation.
I know. And I will definitely come on for part 2. So let me know.
Now we're done with you. Anyway.
You're like, actually, fuck this bitch.